Have you ever wondered why the vast majority of companies never become truly great, but instead languish in the purgatory of mere competence? We are conditioned to believe that the enemy of the great is the bad, the incompetent, or the disastrous, but the sensational, counterintuitive truth revealed in Jim Collins's 5-year research odyssey, Good to Great, is that the enemy of the great is the good. We do not have great schools because we have good schools. We do not have great governments because we have good governments. Few people attain great lives precisely because it is so easy to settle for a good life. This realization strikes with the force of a revelation. Good is not the stepping stone to great, it is the barrier. The narrative begins in a research laboratory in Boulder, Colorado, where Collins and his team of researchers embarked on an archetypal treasure hunt. They were looking for a specific, almost mythical creature, the company that defied the laws of business gravity. They sifted through 1.435 companies, looking for those that had performed at or below the general stock market for 15 years. And then, at a transition point, cumulatively returned at least 3 times the market over the next 15 years. They found only 11. These 11 companies were not the ones you would expect. They were not the darlings of the media. They were the ugly ducklings that quietly transformed into swans while the world was watching the peacocks. The story of Good to Great is the story of what happened inside that black box of transformation. The first curtain rises on a character who defies every stereotype of the modern corporate hero. We expect a charismatic visionary, a larger-than-life personality who rides in on a white horse to save the day. Instead, we meet Darwin Smith. When Smith was named CEO of Kimberly-Clark, the old paper company was languishing. Its stock had fallen 36% behind the market over the previous 20 years. Smith himself was an unpretentious man who looked more like a farm boy than a titan of industry. He was shy, awkward in social situations, and lacked the swagger of a celebrity CEO. He was a lawyer who had once been told he would never make it in the business world. But underneath this unassuming exterior lay a stoic, almost terrifying will. Darwin Smith possessed the ferocity of a badger. Shortly after becoming CEO, he was diagnosed with nose and throat cancer and told he had less than a year to live. He informed the board that he was not dead yet, and he had no intention of dying soon. He commuted weekly from Wisconsin to Houston for radiation therapy and lived for another 25 years, creating one of the greatest corporate transformations in history. The pivotal moment of Smith's leadership, and the defining moment for Kimberly-Clark, came when he looked at the brutal facts of the company's existence. Kimberly-Clark was a paper mill company. They made coated paper. It was a good business, a safe business, but Smith realized it was a business with no future. He looked at the consumer products division, brands like Kleenex, and saw a diamond buried in the rough. In a move that Wall Street analysts called stupid and the business press called suicidal, Darwin Smith decided to sell the mills. He sold the history of the company. He sold the very machines that made the paper. He took the proceeds and threw them into a do-or-die battle against the giants of consumer products, Procter & Gamble and the Scott Paper Company. It was the business equivalent of burning the ships upon reaching the shore. There was no retreat. If they failed, the company would die, but they didn't fail. Under Smith's quiet, steely guidance, Kimberly-Clark beat Procter & Gamble in 6 of 8 categories and generated cumulative stock returns 4.1 times the general market, beating Hewlett-Packard, Coca-Cola, and General Electric. This narrative arc introduces the concept of level 5 leadership. The analysis reveals a shocking dichotomy. The leaders of the comparison companies, those that failed to become great, were often level 4 leaders, effective, charismatic, and egocentric. They were the genius with 1,000 helpers. They set the vision, and the organization existed to execute their will. When they left, the company crumbled. Darwin Smith was a level 5 leader. He possessed a paradoxical mix of personal humility and professional will. He was ambitious, but his ambition was first and foremost for the institution, not for himself. When the company succeeded, level 5 leaders looked out the window to credit factors other than themselves, luck, the team, the market. When the company failed, they looked in the mirror and took full responsibility. The gargantua leaders of the comparison companies did the opposite. They looked in the mirror to preen when things went well, and looked out the window to blame bad luck when things went wrong. The lesson is clear: charisma can be a liability. The most effective leaders are often those who are constitutionally incapable of boasting, yet possess an incurable need to produce sustained results. With the leader in place, the narrative shifts to the vehicle itself, the bus. Conventional wisdom dictates that a new CEO should set a new vision and then find the people to execute it. Vision first, people second. The study shattered this myth. The executives who ignited the transformations from good to great did not figure out where to drive the bus and then get the people to take it there. No, they first got the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and the right people in the right seats, and then they figured out where to drive it. This is the principle of ***, first who, then what, ***. The story takes us to the halls of Wells Fargo in the 1970s. The banking industry was facing a seismic shift, deregulation. No one knew what the future would look like. It was a fog of uncertainty. Dick Cooley, the CEO of Wells Fargo, knew that he couldn't predict the future, but he could predict that he would need the most adaptable, intelligent, and driven people to navigate it. He began to hire the best people he could find, regardless of whether he had a specific job for them. He famously said, "That's how you build the future. If I'm not smart enough to see the changes that are coming, they will, and they'll be flexible enough to deal with them." Contrast this with Bank of America, which followed the "genius with 1,000 helpers" model. Their CEO had a vision, but he surrounded himself with weak generals who waited for orders. When the storm of deregulation hit, Bank of America lost billions, while Wells Fargo soared. The narrative emphasizes the ruthlessness required to get the wrong people off the bus. This is not about cruelty, it is about rigor. The study found that letting the wrong people hang around is unfair to the right people, as they invariably end up compensating for the inadequacies of the others. The good to great leaders were rigorous, not ruthless. To be ruthless is to hack and cut without consideration, often to save the ship in a crisis. To be rigorous is to apply exacting standards at all times, especially when things are going well. The analysis here delivers 3 practical disciplines. 1. When in doubt, don't hire, keep looking. Great companies would rather leave a seat empty than fill it with the wrong person. 2. When you know you need to make a people change, act. The moment you feel the need to tightly manage someone, you've made a hiring mistake. 3. Put your best people on your biggest opportunities, not your biggest problems. The comparison companies did the opposite, burying their best talent in fixing their worst failures. As the bus fills with the right people, the atmosphere changes. We enter a climate where the truth is heard. This leads to the 3rd major concept: confront the brutal facts, yet never lose faith. The narrative transports us to the fierce battleground of the grocery industry in the 1970s. On one side stood the Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company, known to the world as A&P. It was an icon, the Walmart of its day. On the other side stood Kroger, a solid but unspectacular chain. Both companies faced the same brutal fact: the world was changing. The old-fashioned grocery store was dying, being replaced by the modern superstore. A&P had the data. They knew the customers wanted bigger stores, more variety, and lower prices, but the leadership of A&P was trapped in a culture of denial. They loved their old business model. They tried to create a middle ground, opening slightly larger stores but clinging to their old identity. They put their heads in the sand. They ignored the brutal facts because the facts were painful. They held pep rallies to boost morale while the ship was sinking. Kroger, on the other hand, looked the brutal facts in the eye. They conducted tests. They realized that for every superstore they opened, they would have to close several old stores. They realized they would have to shrink to grow. It was a painful, bloody process. They had to fire people. They had to close beloved locations. But they did not flinch. They accepted the reality that the old world was gone. They completely transformed their fleet of stores. The result? A&P began a long, agonizing slide into irrelevance, while Kroger rose to become the #1 grocery chain in America. The psychological core of this segment is the *Stockdale paradox. Jim Collins named this concept after Admiral Jim Stockdale, the highest-ranking United States military officer in the Hanoi Hilton prisoner of war camp during the Vietnam War. Stockdale was tortured over 20 times. He had no rights, no release date, and no certainty that he would ever see his family again. Collins asked Stockdale, "Who didn't make it out?" Stockdale replied, "Oh, that's easy, the optimists." The listeners lean in, confused. Shouldn't the optimists survive? Stockdale explained, the optimists were the ones who said, "We're going to be out by Christmas." And Christmas would come, and Christmas would go. Then they'd say, "We're going to be out by Easter." And Easter would come, and Easter would go, and then Thanksgiving, and then it would be Christmas again. And they died of a broken heart. Stockdale then grabbed Collins by the shoulders and delivered the lesson that defines the good to great mentality. You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be. The good to great companies lived this paradox. They never believed they would fail. They had an unwavering faith that they would find a way to greatness. But they simultaneously had the discipline to look at the spreadsheets, the market data, and the customer feedback, and say, "This is not working. We are bleeding. We are wrong." They did not filter the truth to protect the CEO's feelings. They created a culture where the truth was heard. They used 4 basic practices to do this. 1. Lead with questions, not answers. The leaders didn't say, "Here is the strategy." They asked, "Why are we doing this?" 2. Engage in dialogue and debate, not coercion. The boardroom should be a loud, argumentative place where the best idea wins. 3. Conduct autopsies, without blame. When a mistake happens, finding the cause is more important than finding the culprit. 4. Build red flag mechanisms. Information must reach the top before it is too late. The first 10,000 characters have laid the foundation. We have the driver, level 5 leader. We have the team, first who. And we have the map, or rather, the willingness to look at the map even when it shows we are driving off a cliff, brutal facts. But a bus full of humble people looking at ugly data is not enough to create greatness. They need a direction. They need a strategy that is not just a plan, but a crystalline concept of understanding. The story prepares to pivot to the hedgehog concept, the culture of discipline, and the technology accelerators that act as the engine of the bus. We are about to leave the realm of people and psychology and enter the realm of strategic clarity, where the complex world is simplified into a single, organizing idea that guides every decision. If a man chases 2 rabbits, he catches neither. This ancient proverb is the prologue to the central mystery of the book's second movement. We are conditioned to believe that the world belongs to the complex, the sophisticated, and the cunning. We admire the foxes, the brilliant strategists who see the world in all its nuance, who pursue many ends at once, who are constantly scanning the horizon for the next big thing. But Jim Collins's research unearthed a sensational, almost insulting truth. The leaders of the good to great companies were not foxes. They were hedgehogs. The narrative introduces the parable of the fox and the hedgehog, based on the famous essay by Isaiah Berlin. The fox knows many things. He is smart, fast, and sleek. He devises complex strategies to attack the hedgehog. He circles, he lunges, he feints. The hedgehog, on the other hand, is a dowdy, slow creature who knows only one big thing. Every time the fox attacks, the hedgehog simply rolls into a ball of sharp spikes. The fox, despite his superior intelligence and speed, retreats with a bleeding nose. Every day the battle resumes, and every day the hedgehog wins. Why? Because the hedgehog simplifies a complex world into a single, organizing idea, a basic principle that unifies and guides everything. It reduces all challenges and dilemmas to simple, indeed almost simplistic, ideas. Anything that does not fit into the hedgehog concept is irrelevant. The story transports us to the boardrooms of the comparison companies. They were foxes. They were scattered, diffused, and inconsistent. They launched new initiatives every year. They bought companies in unrelated industries because diversification was the trend. They chased growth for the sake of growth. Then, we look at the good to great companies. They were hedgehogs. They were monotonous. They were boring. They did one thing, and they did it with a fanatical, almost terrifying consistency. But how did they find that one thing? They didn't stumble upon it. They discovered it through a rigorous process of introspection called the *3 circles. Imagine 3 intersecting circles. Circle 1. ***, what you can be the best in the world at. Note the distinction. Not what you want to be the best at, but what you can be the best at. It is an honest acknowledgement of your genetic encoding. If you are a concert pianist but have small hands, you will never be the best in the world, no matter how hard you practice. The good to great companies had the discipline to say, we are good at this, but we can never be the best, so we will stop doing it. Circle 2. ***, what drives your economic engine. This is the search for the single denominator, profit per X, that has the greatest impact on your economics. Circle 3. ***, what you are deeply passionate about. This is not about stimulating passion, it is about discovering what makes your people's blood boil. You cannot manufacture passion, you can only discover it. The hedgehog concept is the sweet spot where these 3 circles overlap. The narrative illustrates this with the story of Walgreens. In the 1970s, Walgreens was just another drugstore chain, competing with Decode, but then, Walgreens found its hedgehog. They looked at the 3 circles. 1. Could they be the best in the world at being a convenient drugstore? Yes. They realized that convenience was their superpower. They started clustering stores so tightly that people would never have to walk more than a few blocks to find one. They invented drive-through pharmacies. 2. What was their economic engine? They switched their metric from profit per store to profit per customer visit. This changed everything. If the goal is profit per visit, you want to increase the density of stores, convenience, to increase frequency. 3. Were they passionate about it? Yes. They had a culture of service. Meanwhile, Decode was a fox. They bought a video rental chain. They bought a food service company. They wandered into industries where they had no expertise, no economic logic, and no passion. Walgreens, the boring hedgehog, beat Decode, the clever fox, by a cumulative stock return of 15-1. The analysis of the hedgehog concept reveals that it is not a goal to be the best, but an understanding of what you can be the best at. It is an act of supreme clarity. It requires the courage to ask, just because we are making money at it, does that mean we can be the best at it? If the answer is no, the good to great company stops doing it. This leads to the council. The research found that good to great companies didn't find their hedgehog concept in a weekend retreat. It took an average of 4 years. They created a council, a group of the smartest people in the company, who met periodically to debate the 3 circles. They argued, they fought, they looked at the brutal facts. They asked, do we really understand our economic engine? They didn't stop until they had a crystal clear answer. With the hedgehog concept in hand, the narrative pivots to the next major discipline, a culture of discipline, ***. This is the magical alchemy that allows a company to act with the creativity of an entrepreneur and the discipline of a bureaucracy. The story begins with a paradox. Startups have culture, creativity, but no discipline. As they grow, they trip over their own feet. Chaos ensues. To fix the chaos, they hire professional managers who institute bureaucracy, rules, procedures, handbooks. The bureaucracy kills the entrepreneurial spirit. The creative people leave. The company becomes mediocre. The good to great companies avoided this death spiral. They built a culture of discipline. This does not mean a culture of tyranny. It means getting disciplined people, level 5 leaders, engaging in disciplined thought, hedgehog concept, and then taking disciplined action. When you have these 3, you don't need hierarchy, you don't need bureaucracy, you need freedom within a framework, The narrative uses the analogy of an airline pilot. The pilot operates within a strict framework, air traffic control, safety checklists, flight path. He cannot just decide to fly to Hawaii because he feels like it. But within that framework, dealing with turbulence, landing in a storm, he has total freedom and responsibility. The most sensational example of this discipline is the story of Dave Scott, a 6-time Ironman triathlon winner. In training, Dave Scott would ride his bike 75 miles, swim 20.000 meters, and run 17 miles. But the detail that shocks the listener is this: Dave Scott would rinse his cottage cheese before eating it to wash off the excess fat. He did not have a coach standing over him with a whip. He rinsed the cottage cheese because he believed that every ounce of fat was an obstacle to his goal. That is the culture of discipline. It is not about a tyrant forcing people to work hard. It is about a culture where people are so committed to the hedgehog concept that they rinse their cottage cheese without being asked. This discipline manifests most powerfully in the stop doing list. Most companies have to-do lists. They are busy adding new initiatives, new products, new meetings. Good to great companies have stop doing lists. They display a fanatical consistency. If an opportunity does not fit the hedgehog concept, they do not do it. Period. It doesn't matter how much money is on the table. It doesn't matter if everyone else is doing it. If it doesn't fit the 3 circles, it is a distraction. The narrative recounts how Darwin Smith at Kimberly-Clark stopped the company from doing almost everything that wasn't related to consumer paper products. He sold the mills. He stopped the side ventures. He focused the entire energy of the company on a single point. This is the discipline of the hedgehog. The narrative intensity builds as we approach the subject of technology accelerators. We live in an age obsessed with technology. We believe that technology is the cause of change. If we just buy the right software, the right AI, the right machinery, we will be great. Collins's research shatters this illusion. The study found that technology was never the primary cause of the transformation from good to great. Not once. The story takes us back to the dot-com bubble of the late 1990s. Drugstore.com launched with massive fanfare, promising to revolutionize the pharmacy business with the internet. They had the technology. They had the hype. Their stock soared to the stratosphere. Walgreens, the old, boring hedgehog, was criticized for being slow. "Why aren't you on the internet?" the analysts screamed. Walgreens didn't panic. They didn't jump on the bandwagon. They went back to their hedgehog concept, convenience. They asked, how does the internet serve convenience? They realized the internet wasn't a replacement for the store, it was an enhancement. They built a system where you could order online and pick up at the drive-thru. They integrated the web with their physical footprint. Drugstore.com eventually crashed and burned. They had technology, but they didn't have a business model. Walgreens used technology as an accelerator of momentum, not a creator of it. The analysis here is crucial. Great companies treat technology like a tool, not a savior. If you give a race car to a bad driver, he will just crash faster. If you give a race car to a great driver, he will set a record. Technology accelerates what you already are. If you are undisciplined, technology will accelerate your chaos. If you are disciplined, technology will accelerate your growth. The good to great companies were pioneers in the application of technology. But they did it differently. Kroger was the first to use barcode scanners. They didn't do it to be high-tech. They did it because it fit their hedgehog concept of increasing throughput and lowering costs. They didn't talk about the technology, they talked about the results. The comparison companies, on the other hand, acted like fearful teenagers. They adopted technology because they were afraid of being left behind. They reacted to the fear of missing out, FOMO. The good to great companies were driven by the inner compulsion to excellence, not the outer fear of obsolescence. As the second part concludes, the pieces of the puzzle are falling into place. We have the leader, level 5. We have the people, first who. We have the truth, brutal facts. We have the strategy, hedgehog. We have the execution, culture of discipline. We have the tools, technology accelerators. The bus is built. The engine is humming. The road is clear. But there is one final, mysterious element. Why does it take so long? Why does it look like an overnight success from the outside, but feel like a grind from the inside? The story prepares to reveal the unifying theory of the entire book, the flywheel. We are about to learn why there is no such thing as a miracle moment. and why the greatest danger to any organization is the doom loop of inconsistent effort. The narrative is set to culminate in the physics of sustained greatness. The most pernicious myth in the business world is the miracle moment. We are conditioned by Hollywood movies and sensational news headlines to believe that greatness is the result of a single dramatic event, a revolutionary product launch, a blockbuster acquisition, or a charismatic CEO giving a "I have a dream" speech that galvanizes the troops. But Jim Collins's research unearthed a reality that is far more boring, yet infinitely more powerful: the flywheel effect. The narrative invites us to imagine a massive, heavy metal disc mounted on an axle. It is 30 feet in diameter, 2 feet thick, and weighs 5.000 pounds. Your job is to get this flywheel rotating as fast as possible. You push with all your might. It barely moves. You push again. It inches forward. You keep pushing, sweating, grunting. After an hour of relentless effort, it completes 1 full rotation. You keep pushing. 2 rotations. 3, 4. Suddenly, something changes. The weight of the flywheel begins to work for you. It builds momentum. 10 rotations. 100. 1,000. Now, the flywheel is spinning at 1,000 miles per hour, generating massive force. If someone walked in at that moment and asked, which push caused the flywheel to go so fast? Was it the first push? The 10th? The 100th? The question would be nonsensical. It was the cumulative effect of all the pushes, applied consistently in the same direction. The good to great transformations followed this exact physics. There was no single defining action, no grand program, no one killer innovation, no solitary lucky break, no miracle moment. From the outside, the media saw a breakthrough. They saw the stock price suddenly shoot up. They wrote articles about the overnight success. But from the inside, the leaders of these companies were baffled. What breakthrough? They asked. We've been doing the same thing for 15 years. The narrative recounts the story of Circuit City in the 1980s. Before it became a giant, it was a mediocre appliance store. They didn't suddenly invent the concept of the consumer electronics superstore. They experimented. They pushed the flywheel. They opened a few stores. They tweaked the model. They opened a few more. They improved the inventory system. They pushed, and then the momentum took over. The comparison companies, however, did not understand the physics of the flywheel. They fell into the doom loop. The doom loop is the tragic inverse of the flywheel. The narrative takes us to the boardroom of Warner Lambert, a direct competitor to Gillette, while Gillette was quietly pushing its high-tech shaving flywheel for decades. Warner Lambert was frantic. They were looking for the magic bullet. Every few years, they would hire a new CEO. The new CEO would come in, stop the flywheel, and try to push it in a completely different direction. We are a consumer health company. Push. No immediate results. No. We are a pharmaceutical company. Stop. Push the other way. No. Let's acquire a candy company. Stop. Push sideways. The result was a company that expended massive amounts of energy but generated zero momentum. They were trapped in a cycle of reaction. They reacted to Wall Street's demands for short-term growth. They reacted to the latest management fads. They reacted to their own fears. The analysis here reveals a terrifying truth. The doom loop is not caused by laziness. It is caused by inconsistency. It is the program of the month syndrome, where employees roll their eyes and say, "Here we go again," knowing that this new strategy will be abandoned in 6 months just like the last one. The comparison companies frequently tried to skip the build-up and jump straight to the breakthrough. They used acquisitions as a substitute for momentum. They bought growth because they couldn't create it. The narrative describes this as buying a bigger flywheel. But if you don't know how to push the first flywheel, buying a bigger one just makes you fail faster. The good to great companies used acquisitions differently. They used them as an accelerator of the flywheel, not a creator of it. They only bought companies that fit perfectly into their spinning hedgehog concept. When Wells Fargo acquired Crocker Bank, it wasn't a desperate gamble, it was the logical next push in a flywheel that was already spinning at maximum velocity. The acquisition was digested smoothly, adding mass to the momentum without disrupting the rhythm. The narrative intensity builds as Collins integrates the findings into a cohesive whole. The listener realizes that the concepts are not isolated tactics, they are a system. Level 5 leadership * gets the right people on the bus, first who? The right people confront the * brutal facts. Facing the facts leads to the * hedgehog concept. The hedgehog concept creates a * culture of discipline. The discipline pushes the * flywheel. And the flywheel generates the * momentum * that makes the company * great. It is a chain reaction. Remove one link, and the chain breaks. But the story does not end with business mechanics. It transcends into the realm of human existence. The final chapter of the book addresses the question, * why greatness, *? Why bother? Why not just be good? Is the payoff worth the pain? Collins argues that the question is flawed. Greatness is not a function of circumstance. Greatness, it turns out, is largely a matter of * conscious choice. The leaders of the good to great companies did not become great because they wanted to be rich. They became great because they literally could not imagine living any other way. They were driven by an inner standard of excellence that had nothing to do with the outside world. The narrative introduces the concept of **, meaningful work, **. The people on the good to great buses were not miserable workaholics. They were energized. They were having fun. Why? Because they were doing work they loved, with people they loved and respected. Collins argues that the definition of a great life is identical to the definition of a great company. It is about finding your hedgehog concept. It is about simplifying your life down to what you are passionate about, what you are genetically encoded to be best at, and what drives your economic engine. When you find that intersection, work ceases to be work. It becomes a craft. It becomes a calling. The analysis of the good to great journey reveals that it is, at its heart, a spiritual journey. It is the rejection of the good enough. It is the refusal to accept the path of least resistance. It is the understanding that a life of mediocrity is a life of wasted potential. The level 5 leader is not just a better manager, they are a more evolved human being, one who has conquered their ego in service of something larger than themselves. The hedgehog concept is not just a strategy, it is a path to self-knowledge. The flywheel is not just a business tool, it is a metaphor for the compounding returns of character. As the narrative draws to a close, Collins connects Good to Great to his previous masterpiece, Built to Last. He posits that Good to Great is actually the prequel. You must first apply the Good to Great principles to get the flywheel spinning and achieve sustained results. Once you have that momentum, you can then apply the * Built to Last principles core ideology. Big, hairy, audacious goals, to turn that greatness into an enduring legacy that lasts for a century. The good to great companies are the startups of the soul, the built to last companies are the cathedrals of the spirit. The final image is of the reader standing at the edge of a cliff, looking out at the landscape of their own life or organization. They see the easy path, the path of the fox, the path of the doom loop, the path of the good. It is seductive, it promises quick wins and celebrity. But then they look at the hard path, the path of the hedgehog, the path of the flywheel, the path of the great. It is steep, it is quiet, it is lonely at first, but it is the only path that leads to a view worth seeing. The realization settles in, greatness is not a destiny reserved for the chosen few. It is a choice available to anyone with the discipline to push the flywheel. Turn by turn, day by day, year by year. Analyze the ultimate meaning that the book intends to convey. * Good to Great is a manifesto for disciplined excellence. * Jim Collins's core message is that greatness is not a matter of luck, circumstance, or genius, it is a matter of discipline. It posits that the enemy of greatness is not failure, but the acceptance of competence. The book serves as a physics textbook for business, replacing the superstition of management fads with the immutable laws of human performance. The final lesson is one of existential agency. You have the power to build something great. Whether it is a company, a department, or a life, but only if you are willing to submit to the rigorous discipline of the flywheel. The climax of this journey leads to a state of quiet confidence. The seeker moves from being a hunter of trends to a builder of momentum. They realize that the media celebrates the noise, but history rewards the signal. The journey ends with the understanding that the push is the point. The joy is not just in the speed of the flywheel, but in the shoulder against the wheel, in the company of others who care just as much as you do. Greatness is not a function of circumstance. Greatness, it turns out, is largely a matter of conscious choice.